I think I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again because I'm always inspired on this subject. And what I'm specifically talking about is the idea that my photography business is what I call the Swiss Army knife of marketing models. Like when you think about a Swiss Army knife, and I happen to have one right here in my pocket, bing, very handy tool, you know, it's got a can opener, a knife, screwdriver. It can even clip your nails, and it's even got a toothpick. But the idea is that when you're running a photography business, especially a photography business, and I'm not sure how this would apply to a lot of other businesses, but I think it's important for photographers, excuse me while I turn my light on, I think it's important for photography studio owners because it addresses a few key ideas, and that's what I want to explain to you right now. I was thinking about Ansel Adams. Now, if you don't know who Ansel Adams is, just give him a quick Google search and read his Wikipedia page. You might say nobody has done more for the field of photography than Ansel Adams. Not only was he an excellent photographer, but he also created a lot of the scientific and chemical approaches and strategies, including the zone system and all that stuff. Now, that stuff wasn't necessarily known or obscure by many. It was already known, but he took it to a whole new level, and he wrote a whole series of books, much of which I owned and read, well, tried to read back when I was like 20 years old. Very complicated. The idea is pretty easy to understand, though, once you do get a grip on it. So, but here's my point. Ansel Adams said, he was quoted as saying he learned more from the bread and butter aspects of photography than from any other area. Now, that's a pretty bold statement to make considering his accomplishments and his lifetime achievements in the world of photography. So yeah, I like, when I think of Ansel Adams, I think of Nikola Tesla, who created many inventions and did so much for the, you know, like he invented the induction motor, he invented AC power, and he was head to head with Edison. Back in the day, Edison was convinced that DC power was the future. Nikola Tesla was convinced that AC power, which he sort of like fine-tuned and brought to the industry and brought to the world. But I think of those comparisons when I think of Ansel Adams. So, and the weird thing is, like I'd mentioned, the quote from Ansel Adams was that he said he learned more from the bread and butter aspects of photography than from any other source. I mean, I find that so fascinating. And he was a school photographer. Apparently, I remember reading that too somewhere, somehow. I'm not sure that it can be verified, but nevertheless, the quote still stands, has a solid meaning toward something that I really believe in, and that is that especially in the early days, take on all photographic jobs that you can and be as diverse as you can. I'm going to give you another analogy. I remember my sister's a lawyer, and we grew up around a lot of lawyers. My sisters used to babysit for lawyers, and when I was young, I used to do work, you know, part-time jobs for lawyers. I was a process server for a few law firms in town. Did that for many, many years in my early 20s. You know, it was a good side gig. And lawyers, you know, they're nice people. They're pretty smart. You talk to them, you get to know them. They're pretty down to earth for the most part. And I remember one lawyer saying he couldn't stand doing wills, but he had to do them nevertheless because it was just one of those things that serviced his clients. You know, he had clients in real estate and in business law and all that other stuff. And it's like as if you're a photography studio and you got to do these little side jobs that are like copy work, for example, or maybe passports or weddings. A lot of people don't like doing weddings, so I'll talk about that too. So when I think of the overreaching strategy behind having a Swiss Army knife of businesses, that means you have a lot of tools in your toolbox and you're able to do just more than one specific area. Now, there are exceptions to this rule and risks that go with those exceptions. Let me explain. I know photographers in larger cities that service a very high-end market, and they do high-end portraits in studio, and that's all they do. 100% all they do. You ask them to do a wedding, a small family portrait, a Christmas special, fairy portraits, passport portraits, sporting portraits, you know, a hockey team or whatever. Not in a million years would they do that kind of stuff. Now, a lot of these people that I know have personally earned the right to be able to establish themselves as that. Now, the risks are, who saw COVID coming, right? Where if you're relying on one industry, which is fine, by the way, if you can pull it off, and COVID hits, then you're kind of like stuck. You're going to have to either ride out that situation or learn and go into different alternate industries, you know, pivot, as they say, if there's an ability to pivot. So, but for me specifically, and this is why I like and pursue the Swiss Army knife of photography studios. For me, I like the ability to pull in from different areas and have an overall volume from year to year. So I look at my volume, which is typically 6 figures and more, and I look at it, I can break it apart and I can say, okay, I got X amount of this was from fairies, X amount was from pop-up weddings, X amount was from family portraits, X amount was from promotions that I did with family portraits. I did a few commercial gigs, I did a whole bunch of headshots. So as you can see, it's like a kaleidoscope of different offerings. And I think that that is the way for many of us who are not in a specific, you know, let's call it the Beverly Hills niche, you know, where you have very high-end market and you're well-known, well-respected, and you built a solid career, a solid business, and a brand based on that particular demographic, where they're used to paying big bucks and they're used to your very high quality of service and your product, which is cool. It's all very, very cool. I live in a smaller city. We have 160,000 when you count all the different townships and towns that surround my particular city. So we can draw from 30 miles inwards. There's a lot of satellite towns, and predominantly the industry in my city is mining. So we're a blue collar union town. So if I went in and said I'm only going to charge $3,000 as a session fee for a very high-end family portrait, I would have a heck of a time trying to push that. I don't even know that I'd want to. I mean, really, in all honesty, I don't know that that's something I would actually want. I like the idea of being diversified. I like the idea of being able to do pop-up weddings and full weddings and baby portraits. Well, I'm not as big a fan of baby portraits as I used to be. We photograph them, and I used to do way more. And you might say that me doing baby portraits was like Ansel Adams doing school portraits and Ansel Adams learning from the bread and butter. For me, baby portraits was the bread and butter of our business. It's pretty much built the foundation in many, many ways. Okay, so that's my point. My point is I want you to consider and look at different markets. And I know John Butler from Pembroke area is totally dead set against doing weddings, and he has his reasons why. And I want to suggest something insofar as how he could approach doing weddings and adding weddings as an extra income source. Now, weddings, from my experience, and many of other people have experienced the same thing, weddings were a much bigger market than they are now for several reasons. One, COVID. Two, I'm 63 now, so there's a whole series of guys and girls coming in behind me that are like the young, hip, cool wedding photographers. And I got to compete against that. I'm not interested. I mean, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I have a solid basis with which to market my wedding photography. So the fact of the matter is, when you're starting out, even when you're in the business for 10 plus years, 20 years, there are benefits to being diversified in many areas. Dan Kennedy, my favorite marketing guru, always said the power of one is a dangerous number. When you are dependent on one marketing strategy, one lead generation strategy, one industry, if one thing changes, you're screwed. So you want to have some variety. That's kind of one of the reasons why I believe in having the Swiss Army knife. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about what I was talking about a second ago with John Butler and John and many photographers like John. Like, I remember consulting with a photographer who had a studio in the home, and she was like, "I'm not doing babies." I'm like, "How could you?" And I'm not doing weddings. And so, she was in a small town. I said, "Well, what do you want? I mean, where's your market? That's where the money is. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of a compromise in your values, but I got to ask her, well, why is it you don't want to do those?" So back to my main point and my main suggestion to guys like John or anyone who's like, "No, I'm not doing weddings." They find it to be too much work, too stressful, too cumbersome. Hey, look, we're portrait photographers. We're people. I'm a people person. I love being around people. That's my thing. That's one of the reasons I love shooting weddings. Now, it is stressful, but all you got to do is say, look, how am I going to become better at managing that stress? How am I going to become better at having an approach and a strategy so that it's not stressful? So you got to list all the things that are stressful, and you could apply that to anything, not just weddings. You could apply it to whether you're a baby photographer, whether you're a fairy photographer or family photographer, and you don't want to do those types of photography, and you're going to give up that particular lucrative market because of your pig-headedness. So here's my solution, besides what I just suggested, and that is finding ways to diminish, not eliminate, you'll never eliminate the stress. And for me, that's been like decades of shooting weddings. I'm now like a wedding planner. When couples come in here, I talk to them, I listen, and we have a discussion. They're very much on the same page as I am, and I control the situation very much the way Steven Spielberg directs a movie. So people actually like that. And rarely have I ever encountered a bridezilla. If you can encounter a bridezilla, it's because you are vulnerable to that, and you got to shore the dam, man. You got to fix those plugs in the dam. So my suggestion is, like, I know one of the sort of complaints or grievances about doing weddings is how long the day is. Well, that's easy. All you got to do is say, hey, we have a 6-hour maximum package, and that's all I'm willing to do. Or a 4-hour, or a 2-hour. How about a 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour package? We've got the mini, we got the medium, and we got the large, and priced accordingly, and that's all you offer. So, all right, I gotta go. Somebody's here with coffee.
Robert, good morning.
You have coffee, there he is.
Oh, you're showing the beast, are you?
I'm doing a video, so I'm just finished up. I'm talking marketing, and
Do I have to be polite, or can I be an angry?
you say whatever you want. So I shot your wedding in '95,
5.
and I did your headshot a few months ago.
And you were so good, we're still married.
Did you hear that? So yeah, we're going to talk marketing because it's something I do occasionally, and I did a review of his website where the pictures are. We'll talk later.